All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the January 5th, 2021 City Council meeting. Madam City Clerk, I'm noticing a quorum. Would you please call the roll?
Yes. Councilmember Tibbetts?
Here.
Councilmember Schwedhelm?
Here.
Councilmember Sawyer? Councilmember Sawyer will be joining the meeting later. Councilmember Fleming?
Here.
Councilmember Alvarez?
Present.
Vice Mayor Rogers?
Present.
Mayor Rogers?
Here.
Let the record show that all council members are present with the exception of Councilmember Sawyer.
Great, thank you so much. As we had no closed session today and no study sessions, as a little bit of housekeeping before we jump into our full meeting, I just wanted to remind council members to go ahead and keep your audio on mute unless you're speaking. You will have an opportunity to unmute yourself if you need to, and we'll be asking you to as well if it's time to speak. As members of the public join this meeting, they'll be participating as an attendee. They'll have their microphones and cameras also muted and only be able to view the panelists for today's meeting on the items as they're being presented. If folks are calling in from their telephone, we will be renaming your phone so that we can have your privacy continue, but you will still have an opportunity to speak at the appropriate times on each item and on public comment. And then just as a reminder, the City of Santa Rosa is committed to creating a safe and inclusive environment, and we will not tolerate any hate speech or actions. Staff are monitoring the public comments that are coming in, and if somebody is disruptive, they will be removed and asked to participate in another way. We also will end the meeting if we need to going forward. So hopefully everybody sticks to it and we have a good meeting going through. Now, Madam City Clerk, can you walk us through how the public will be able to participate in today's meeting?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. After each agenda item is presented, the mayor will ask for council comments and then open it up for public comment. The host in Zoom will be lowering all hands until public comment is open for the agenda item. Once the mayor has called for public comment, the mayor will announce for the public to raise their hand if they wish to speak on the specific agenda item. If you are calling in to listen to the meeting audibly, you can dial *9 to raise your hand. The mayor will then call on the public who have raised their hands. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes and a timer will appear on the screen for the council and the public to see. Once all live public comments have been heard, the meeting host will play voicemail public comments. If you provide a live public comment on an agenda item, but also submitted an email, e-comment, or recorded a voice message public comment, your email, e-comment, or voice message public comment will not be duplicated, read, or played during the meeting. I do want to say that any emails or e-comments submitted by the deadline of 5 p.m. yesterday, those have been uploaded to the agenda packet as late correspondence, and those comments were emailed to the council. Additionally, there are 2 public comment periods on today's agenda to speak on non-agenda matters. It's items 12 and 16. This is the time when any person may address the council on matters not listed on this agenda, but which are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council.
All right, thank you so much, Stephanie. As I mentioned before, we had no closed session or study session items. We have no proclamations or presentations today as well. Sitting in the city manager seat today is Jason Nutt, our assistant city manager. Welcome, Jason. If you would like, do you want to lead us through item number 6 on our agenda, staff briefings?
Thank you, Mayor Rogers. We do not have a COVID response update under item 6.1, but Rosa de la Rosa, our Deputy Director of Economic Development, will be talking about our Community Empowerment Plan update.
I'm sorry, I actually have an update on the Economic Recovery Task Force related to COVID. I think Magali will be giving an update on the other item.
Okay. Magali, tell us, do you have update for the community empowerment plan.
I am not seeing Magali on the meeting at this point.
Let's go ahead and shoot her a text, and let's jump in with Raisa if you're ready to go, Raisa.
I am ready to go. Good afternoon, Mayor Rogers and members of the council. I just have a very quick update just to let you know that there will be a council study session next Tuesday, January 12th, regarding options related to the expiration of Santa Rosa's COVID-specific temporary paid sick leave ordinance. Our ordinance, as well as the state supplemental paid sick leave and the Federal Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act, expired on December 31st, 2020. There are a couple of existing and ongoing programs that still cover employees, but we will be giving a study session next week to discuss our own response. The Economic Recovery Task Force discussed the options at yesterday's meeting, but have no recommendation to forward to the council as part of next week's study session. And that's the end of my report.
Okay, do we have any questions from council on that update?
And then Mayor Rogers and council, item 6.3, the glass fire recovery update. Paul Lowenthal, Assistant Fire Marshal, will be reporting.
Good evening, Mayor Rogers, Vice Mayor Rogers, members of the council. Paul Lowenthal, Assistant Fire Marshal with the Fire Department, helping to coordinate both the watershed and debris task force for the city manager. So some highlights, starting off on the debris side. Private and the public debris removal program are both underway in the city limits. Happy to report our first cleared site that is ready for rebuild. With that, we are moving forward with plans to host our first city-only community meeting that'll focus on the needs here locally. As we've discussed in the past, with 1,150 parcels affected by the fire, our goal now is to provide direct outreach to those residents through a survey, figuring out what exactly their needs are and helping both our rebuild as well as all of our impacted community members with their recovery needs moving forward. Following some of the lessons learned in 2017 with concerns with contractors, we've continued to monitor the debris removal activities taking place in the city limits, especially with the number of homes that are still occupied immediately around the debris sites, making sure that the activities are taking place as they're supposed to. Only had 2 circumstances with some contractors, and we're both given verbal warnings and letting them know that we'd rather keep that here at a local level and working with their local agency reps and hoping to not escalate it to what happened in 17 where the state came in. With that, for our ongoing tree issues, we're happy to see that the tree assessments have started by Cal OES, primarily up in the Brigadoon and Scotland areas off of Los Alamos Road. Also want to provide 2 updates on the PG&E issue. PG&E has responded to the letter that was issued by the city manager as well as the county administrator. With that, they have invited the city of Santa Rosa, county of Sonoma, Cal OES, Cal Recycle, and other communities affected by the fires to discuss our concerns. We've accepted the invitation and provided them with a list of staff that we'd like to attend and hope to have that meeting scheduled soon. We are also working on a meeting with the CPUC. A tentative date to discuss the PG&E concerns here locally has been requested with the CPUC. And select staff, including Mayor Rogers, will be part of that request as well. On the stormwater side of the house, we have discovered an issue that is in the Skyhawk open space. As you know, the Skyhawk open space area was heavily damaged by the fire and has remained closed. However, residents have continued to use that. Following this recent rainstorm, similar to what we saw in 2017 with the storm drain issues that were burned away and created sinkhole and other concerns in the Fountain Grove area, the burned storm drain was discovered in the Skyhawk open space near a walking path that was damaged by the fire and is being used. With that, members from Transportation, Public Works, Parks, as well as Streets, and our stormwater and debris task force members have been back up into the area and have put together an outreach plan with our communications team, reminding residents to please adhere to the warnings that are in the area and stay out until we can make all the repairs needed. and that message is going out with a video tonight. And also happy to report that we're down to only 2 homes that we have left to get into a private or public debris removal program with the deadline set for the 15th, and there is no anticipated extension of that deadline. And that is it, unless you have any questions.
Council, are there any questions for Paul? Councilmember Tibbetts.
Thanks, Mayor. Paul, I'm sorry if you said it, I missed it. What's the date that you're going to be sitting down with PG&E to have this conversation?
So PG&E responded back about a week and a half ago or so with the request and said that we would hear back from Melinda Rivera, scheduling the date after the first of the year. On the 28th of December, we acknowledged the request and provided Melinda with the staff, and she acknowledged it and said that she would be in touch soon. So we plan to follow up again next week if we don't hear anything by then, just to try and stay on top of it.
And Paul, just really fast,
Okay,
just as a little bit of context for the public, could you explain what the letter from the city and from the county was a request on? And I apologize, Councilmember Tibbetts, I'll come back to you in a second.
Yeah, so we first brought a concern forward to the council early last month when we became concerned with the number of trees that were felled by PG&E that fall under their phase 1 and phase 2, priority 1 and priority 2 tree removal process to their vegetation management program. They're related to fire damaged trees and or trees that are in close proximity to the repairs that need to be to take place following the glass fire. With that, upwards of 9,000 priority 1 trees and several thousand priority 2 trees were felled by PG&E on both private and public property, majority of them being on private property. That being said, PG&E has a standing rule that the wood that is felled by PG&E is ultimately the responsibility of the homeowner who has the tree felled on. Any wood that's over 4 inches in diameter is left on the property. All wood under 4 inches is chipped and removed. The bigger concern for us is all the debris that's over 4 inches in diameter that we have seen. So in 2017, those trees had a process that that residents could go through after the Tubbs and Nuns fire, where people can opt into a program that allowed PG&E to remove trees. You would essentially sign the rights to the trees over and they would remove them. That program does not exist this year. Where the real conflict for us occurs is that this is the first year that Cal OES has a tree removal program. So this is something we fought for in 17 and we're not able to get. And a lot of that fighting and work that we did locally helped push the state to implementing a program in Butte County and then ultimately was brought here. The issue we have is that once PG&E felled their priority 1 and priority 2 trees, they're no longer eligible for the state's debris removal program. So a number of our residents, both in the city and the county, have been left with wood that they are having to now remove with their own debris removal money. Tree debris removal money is typically pretty minimal. I can speak from experience and from a lot of residents that I've dealt with since 2017. So we're working with Cal OES, the County of Sonoma, and upwards of 11 other counties that have expressed similar concerns to us to get PG&E to reinstitute a tree removal program here locally, or a wood removal here program locally. And we're also working on future potential legislative and policy changes that will hopefully get the CPUC, PG&E, and Cal OES to coordinate these issues in the future so that residents don't experience what they're experiencing here.
Great. Thank you so much, Paul. Councilmember Tibbetts, do you have any other questions?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks, Paul. And, I hope you'll keep keeping us updated on this. And Sue, I had a question at the last meeting. We discussed this about what, if any, legal recourse we would have and potentially banding together with other jurisdictions that are having the same issue. You were going to do some research into that and report back. If you sent an email, I may have missed it, but I was curious if you had done any more research.
Councilmember Tibbetts, I was actually out the last 2 weeks, so I have not done the additional research, but I have been involved in the various communications in coordinating with PG&E and trying to reach a solution through PG&E and through CPUC. So we'll continue to keep you updated, and I'll continue to look at all options possible.
Thanks.
Counselor, are there any other questions for Paul? All right, I'm not seeing any. So with that, we will go to public comment for item 6 on our staff briefings. For those who are just joining our meeting, if you are interested in giving a comment, click the raise hand feature on your Zoom, and then we'll call on you and you'll have 3 minutes once you have your voice active, 3 minutes to give your comments on the item. Again, for item number 6, updates for the council. Madam City Clerk, I'm not seeing any hands raised. Did we have any emails or voicemails to play? Excuse me.
Yes, Mayor, we did not receive any voicemails on this item. However, we received 2 voice message public comments and we did not receive any emails. So I will go forward and play the voice message recordings.
Hello, my name is Kim Kelly. I am calling regarding the agenda item 6.1 regarding COVID-19. I am a retired registered nurse. I'm interested in finding out if we could get our city and our state to consider putting a call out to all retired RNs who can come and be an aid in administering the vaccinations. I'm a 64-year-old retired nurse that retired from UCSF. I would like to get the vaccine prior to doing it myself, so I'd feel safe. I have not left my house since March practically, all food delivered, not going to any restaurants, absolutely zero gatherings of any kind of, unless they're outdoors and well more than 6 feet apart. So I've been doing my part in not spreading the virus, and I would like to feel like I'm actually doing something to beat this virus. My phone number is 415-509-6575. If anyone wants to contact me about how we can put the call out to RNs who are retired and are able to volunteer their time, I'm sure it would be well worth it for anyone if they can get themselves vaccinated. There'd be quite a few people out there that could aid in getting this vaccine distributed to people who need it. Thank you so much for the time. Bye-bye.
Good New Year to you. Dwayne DeWitt from Roseland, commenting on staff briefings, 6.1 COVID, 6.2 community empowerment, 6.3 glass fire recovery. Essentially, the COVID situation in the Southwest Santa Rosa area may be one of the more difficult ones to solve because there's a lot of people who have a different culture in which they don't believe they should abide by any of the guidelines that the state and federal government are putting forward, which the city is attempting to abide by. Specifically at Southwest Community Park, every day, first thing in the morning, a group of drinkers arrive, not wearing masks, beginning to drink all day long at the park benches and making it difficult for folks who just perhaps may want to walk through. And those folks without their masks and getting drunk probably are going to be people who help spread COVID rather than stop it. You could have some community empowerment by actually putting some sort of a monitor who comes through that park and cleans out the drunks, gets them out of there, and then lets community volunteers come in and help clean up the park. And then those community volunteers could be working together to become more empowered by working with city agencies. All this could be done with social distancing, 6 feet apart, wearing masks, and abiding by guidelines. Now, also on the update from the glass fire, apparently one would think the funding that will come from any state agencies will just come through the city and there'll be no discussion of how it'll be spent. It would be nice if the city would work to put forward fireproof fencing. There is such a thing as fireproof concrete, and that fencing could go in. After the fire of 2017, CAL FIRE recommended there be no wooden fencing rebuilt in the fire-prone areas. And yet the first thing to happen was wooden fences were rebuilt out by Lark Field, out by Old Redwood Highway, just to the north of the city, and then wooden fences in many other places. You folks could help by pursuing fireproof fencing, looking for funding, doing the things that you do. Thank you.
Mayor, that concludes public comment. Voice messages received.
Great. Thank you so much, Dina. I'll bring it back to the council. Council members, are there any other questions for Paul or Raisa on these two items? Okay, seeing none, we will move on our agenda. Thank you to both of you. We'll go to item 7, the city manager and city attorney reports. Who wants to start?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll go ahead and begin and state that I have no report on behalf of the city manager tonight.
And I also have no report for this evening.
Okay. Now, Madam City Attorney, we have one change that we made to the agenda since the public posting for the preliminary agenda, the addition of the emergency for the glass fire. We have obviously our new sunshine ordinance that was passed a couple of months ago to discuss sort of the procedures for adding something at the last minute. Can you walk us through what that looks like and what the council would need to do tonight to add that to the agenda to be able to discuss it here at item, I believe it's 11.11.
Certainly, Mr. Mayor, and I would recommend that the council's action take place immediately prior to the reading of the consent calendar. But I'm happy to give the background now. So item 11.11, it's a consent item. It is the extension of the proclamation of local emergency due to the glass fire. It did not appear on the preliminary agenda that was published several weeks ago. That omission was due to an inadvertent staff oversight. We nevertheless recommend that the item is heard tonight so as to avoid any potential assertion that that proclamation of local emergency has lapsed. We do receive a number of benefits by having that proclamation in place. Under the current council policy, which is in effect at this point, policy number 00035, the council may consider an item that did not appear on the preliminary agenda only if it finds a good cause. And this exception to the requirement for posting on the preliminary agenda, that is continued and strengthened in the new open government ordinance, which will formally go into effect next July 1st, but will begin to roll out the implementation a little later this month. So in order to consider the glass fire emergency declaration this evening, the council would need to find good cause to take it up despite it not being on the preliminary agenda. Good cause is defined under the policy and will be similarly defined under the open government ordinance as that as a result of exceptional circumstances beyond the control of the council, compliance with the currently 9-day notice requirement, it will be a 12 business day notice requirement. So compliance with that notice requirement would impose a substantial burden on the city's ability to conduct its business or result in prejudice to a private person. That finding, in order to make that finding, a member of the council would need to make a motion, have to receive a second, and then there would be a vote by the entire council. In order to comply with the current policy and the future ordinance, that finding would have to have the concurrence of at least 5 council members or if not all 7 council members are present, it will need a unanimous vote at this point. Those numbers will change a little bit once we're under the new ordinance, but under the current policy, again, at least 5 council members if everyone is present. If we are still a shy 1 council member, it will require a unanimous vote to take that up under the noticing of the final agenda. Happy to answer any questions. And again, I recommend that we address that and take that action immediately prior to the consent hearing of the consent calendar.
Okay, thank you so much, Madam City Attorney. Are there any questions from the council? Okay, seeing none, we will come back to that item when we do agenda item 11, so that we can have that discussion at that time, and perhaps we'll have our 7th City Council member joining us. With that, we'll go on to public comment for item 7, the City Manager and City Attorney's report. If folks in the public would like to speak on this item, go ahead and raise your hand now on Zoom. And I'll give it a couple moments here to see if anybody does. Okay, seeing none. Madam City Clerk, did we have any voicemail comments on item 7?
No, we did not.
Okay, then we'll move on to item number 8. Are there any statements of abstention by council members on any item tonight? Councilmember Tibbetts.
Thank you, Mayor. I have to abstain from item 11.2, declaration of homeless emergency. Standard practice for me at this point. It creates certain concessions for the nonprofit organization that I work for that are beneficial to our operation. And then Sue, I had a question for you on the DeTurk Winery Village. That's less than 500 feet from the 610 Wilson Street location that St. Vincent de Paul owns. Do I need to recuse from that one?
Yes, I would recommend that you recuse from that one as well.
Okay, there you have it, Mayor. I'll be recusing from those 2. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Councilmember Tibbetts. Are there any other abstentions for tonight's agenda? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to item number 9. That's the mayor's and council members' reports. Does anybody have a report that they'd like to deliver tonight? I'll go ahead and start with you, Councilmember Fleming, and then I'll come to you, Councilmember Tibbetts.
Yeah, I would like to announce the appointment of Maria Pretzelis to the Cultural Heritage Board.
Great.
That is the extent of my announcements.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Tibbetts.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got a couple here. One, I'd like to announce Manny Balcanegro Jr. to the Community Advisory Board for me. I also wanted to bring something to this council. I recently had the chance to speak with the owner of Village Bakery, and he has been speaking with a lot of restaurateurs in Santa Rosa. And he brought to my attention, and I don't know if the council's aware, I wasn't, but certain companies like Grubhub and DoorDash will charge sometimes up to 30% of the tab of the meal that somebody orders to the restaurant for that delivery service. And of course, during COVID-19, everybody's ordering with Grubhub or DoorDash. And he asked me to look into some ordinances that were passed in Redwood City, San Francisco, Oakland, and other areas that cap the fee percentage at 15%. So I spent some time this week taking a look into it, trying to, determine did it seem to have an impact on Grubhub or DoorDash and their ability to deliver? And from what I could tell, it did not. But we may have some speakers tonight on this topic, I'm not sure. But I wanted to refer this over to Victoria and John on the Economic Recovery Task Force, because I think it is something that we could do to help some of our local businesses. Mayor, I don't know if you want to just refer it or if you want me to seek a second. I'm happy to go through that process, but I think we should take this up.
All right, thank you, Councilmember. If it works for you, we have our goal setting coming up in a couple of weeks here. Are you comfortable if we have a discussion in there about putting it on the agenda? And if not, we can certainly have that vote and assign it to the Economic Development Subcommittee as we are going to be discontinuing our ad hocs here shortly.
Yeah, let me actually just ask if there is a second on the council, because I hate to wait a handful of weeks. I think if it's of interest to the council and it's a benefit to local businesses, especially if we're getting rid of those ad hocs, we should probably take it up sooner as opposed to later.
Okay. Is there a second to add that item to the agenda? And for the public, since we're in a new year, given the Brown Act constraints, the way that it works for the council is a motion and a second to add something to the agenda. Discussion will stop at that point because it is not a publicly noticed discussion topic, and we would be depriving folks in the community from participating. And then we would bring it up at our next meeting as a discussion on whether or not to actually move forward with crafting a policy on the item.
Mayor, I have a question for Mr. Tibbetts. Just a clarification on the process. Is he requesting a second to move this to the Economic Recovery Task Force, or second to move it to the Economic Development Subcommittee?
I would be fine with either. I thought this would, because it's related to COVID, this would fall, I think, beneath the purview of the Economic Recovery Task Force. And my logic is that we may not want to limit Grubhub's percentage beyond COVID-19, but I think during COVID-19, you know, they're taking 30% of the profits away from, this is the gross income, away from our local restaurants to do those deliveries. In the case of Redwood City, Oakland, San Francisco, and a handful of others, they seem to be capping that at 15. Grubhub still making a lot of money doing these deliveries, but the restaurants aren't struggling as much. So I was asked by, again, Village Bakery for John, who's here. I think Mark Stark is involved in a handful of our restaurants, and they asked that I bring it to the council.
I'm okay with it if it's being referred to the Economic Development Subcommittee.
Yeah,
I'll second.
Sure, that's great.
Yeah, and I don't know if we need a formal vote. I am happy to push that along to the Economic Development Subcommittee. And in just a second here, I'll be announcing the committees and the community chairs. And I just asked that committee to take it up at the chair's purview for that, if that works for you, council member. Seeing a thumbs up, great.
Yeah, thanks, Chris.
Okay, council member Sweathelm, did you have a council member's report?
Yes, I just wanted to announce,
welcome, council member Sawyer.
Yes, I had 2 appointments I wanted to announce. One for the General Plan Update Community Advisory Committee. I'll be appointing Annie Barber from District 6. And for the Design Review Board, I'll be appointing Warren Hedgepeth. That's all to report. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, council member. Council member Alvarez.
Yeah, good afternoon. My question is more in regards, it's more of a question in regards to the appointments concerning the lot area for the different council members. I would like to appoint Jorge Nocencio to the Community Advisory Board, but we are noticing that there is a discrepancy with area both 1 and 6 with the areas that were designated. I'm also seeing that Natalie and I need to redraw our areas, and I'm wondering what is the process for this.
Yeah, that's a question for Sue. And so as I understand it, our Community Advisory Board districts, which were created before we were in district elections, they do not overlap with our new current council districts. And traditionally, how those districts for CAB have been assigned is by random lot. Is there a process in place, Sue, to better align those with our council districts? Or is this something that potentially needs to be addressed in our charter review process?
I think there are avenues in both. There may be actions that need to be taken in both. Certainly in our charter review, that is the place where we can redraw those lines for CAB. But in terms of, in the meantime, giving at least some general alignment between districts and the CAB districts, the council districts and the CAB districts, I'll look at whether we might be able to make that change without a charter amendment, but I will have to look at that. So.
Okay, if you could do a little research and then
I'll
come
do
back
that.
to us,
That'd
be great.
Thanks.
Does that work for you, Councilmember Alvarez?
It does, and I appreciate it.
Perfect.
In the interim, if you like, Councilmember Alvarez, I do have that seat and I can appoint Jorge Inocencio. Would that be your request?
I would appreciate that very much, Councilwoman Fleming.
So I therefore appoint Jorge Inocencio to the Community Advisory Board.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Are there any other council member reports? Just as a general reminder for folks, and it was great to see some of it happening today, if you have not had a chance to fill your board and commission appointments, please try to do so in the next couple of weeks. We do have a lot of important work before our Planning Commission and Design Review Board. And in the meantime, I just wanted to remind many of our appointees, some of whom I do see are in the audience for the meeting, that you do continue to serve until you are replaced by a council member. So we do appreciate the work that's being put in and asking you to do it for just a little while longer while council members get those appointments in place. For my report tonight, I did want to report out on the committee appointments for the City Council subcommittees. You will also see in item 9.2 some of our additional appointments that'll happen on regional positions. I did want to start with the BPU Liaison Committee. I will be appointing Councilmember Tibbetts and Councilmember Alvarez to that committee. For the Economic Development Subcommittee, I will be appointing Councilmember Sawyer, Councilwoman Fleming, Councilmember Alvarez, and Councilmember Sawyer will chair that committee. For the Climate Action Subcommittee, I will be appointing myself, Councilmember Alvarez, and Vice Mayor Rogers to that committee, and I will chair that committee. For the Public Safety Subcommittee, I will be appointing Councilwoman Fleming, Vice Mayor Rogers, and Councilmember Schwethelm, with Councilwoman Fleming chairing that committee. For the Downtown Subcommittee, I'll be appointing Councilmember Tibbetts, Councilwoman Fleming, and Councilmember Sawyer, with Councilmember Tibbetts chairing that committee. For Long-Term Finance, I will be appointing myself, Councilmember Sawyer, and Councilmember Schwethelm, with myself chairing that committee. For the Violence Prevention Partnership, both the steering and policy committees, I'll be appointing Councilmember Schwethelm and Vice Mayor Rogers to both of those. For the city's Cannabis Ad Hoc Committee, I'll be appointing Councilmember Sawyer, Councilmember Tibbetts, and Councilwoman Fleming, with Councilmember Sawyer chairing that committee. And then for our Open Government Committee, I will chair that committee myself, with Council Members Alvarez and Vice Mayor Rogers joining me as well on that one. And with that, we will move on. I will open it up for public comment on mayors and council members' reports to see if there's any comments from the public. I'm not seeing any hands. Dina, were there any voicemail comments?
Yes, Mayor, there were. One moment.
Okay. If it's for item 9.2, do we want to jump into, I guess we will take public comment on item 9.2 first. So I will come back to the Zoom after we hear this comment from Mr. DeWitt for item 9.2 as well, before the council deliberates on the appointments.
Comment 9.2, council liaison positions. These appointments that are going to go forward should have representatives from our districts who are most impacted by the activities occurring, such as the Sonoma County Transportation Authority, the waste management, the alternate to the Sonoma Clean Power. the people that serve on these boards and commissions to represent us, the electors to you folks, the elected officials, these people should be willing to talk with us citizens and voters, find out what's important for us, and then act upon that. Actually do the best possible to be budget hawks and cut the costs of the taxpayers while getting the best efficiency from the highly paid bureaucrats that operate these things. And then making sure that things are done in a transparent manner so that sweetheart deals aren't possible, so that things are done in the best possible manner to help the taxpayers of Santa Rosa. Thank you. Good New Year.
That concluded voice message public comment on item 9, and there were no emails received.
Great, thank you, Dina. And I don't see any additional hands from the public, so I will bring that back to the council. Now, council, for item 9.2 and items 9.3, traditionally the mayor appoints and the council approves is the way that this works. So I have recommendations that I will present as a motion, and we'll start with the JPAs and then we'll move on to the regional entities first. I'll make my motion. I'll see if there's a second and discussion, and then we can go to a vote on that as well. Madam City Attorney, for the JPAs, can I do them all in one go, or do you want me to take them each individually?
I'd recommend that you take them each individually.
Okay. I will start with item 9.2.1. My motion is to reappoint myself as the city's representative to the Sonoma County Transportation Authority and Councilmember Alvarez as the alternate for that entity.
Second.
Is there any comments from council? Okay, Madam City Clerk, can you call the roll?
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Tibbetts?
Aye.
Councilmember Schwedhelm?
Aye.
Councilmember Sawyer?
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming?
Aye.
Councilmember Alvarez?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rogers?
Aye.
Mayor Rogers?
Aye.
That motion passes with 7 ayes.
Thank you. We'll move on to number 2. That is Sonoma Clean Power. My motion is for me to start in the primary position with Councilwoman Fleming as the alternate for Sonoma Clean Power.
I'll second that.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, Madam City Clerk, call the roll.
Who seconded that? Was that Sawyer?
I saw Schwedhelm first.
Schwedhelm second, thank you. Okay. Councilmember Tibbetts?
Aye.
Councilmember Schwedhelm?
Aye.
Councilmember Sawyer?
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming?
Aye.
Councilmember Alvarez?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rogers?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Vice Mayor. I'm getting used to it, you know?
Mayor Rogers?
Aye.
That motion passes with 7 ayes.
All right, great. I'll try to vote for you often, I promise. Moving on to number 3, Zero Waste Sonoma. My motion is for Councilmember Sawyer to be the primary representative from Santa Rosa, with Councilmember Alvarez as the alternate.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, let's call the roll.
Councilmember Tibbetts?
Aye.
Councilmember Schwedhelm?
Aye.
Councilmember Sawyer?
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming?
Aye.
Councilmember Alvarez?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rogers?
Aye.
Mayor Rogers?
Aye.
That motion passes with 7 ayes.
Great. And finally, for the Renewal Enterprise District, my motion is for council members Fleming and Tibbetts to be the city's primary representatives, with Councilmember Schwedhelm as the alternate, able to fill in for either if they can't be at a meeting.
Second.
Through the mayor, I have a question.
Yep.
I'm not clear that the Renewal Enterprise District allows for an alternate. Were you able to verify that?
Yeah, it was listed, and Councilmember Dowd was the alternate for last year. But between yourself and Councilmember Tibbetts, I think the two of you had it covered sufficiently, so we never saw him at the meetings.
Okay, thank you.
Are we ready for a roll call vote?
Yes, please.
Councilmember Tibbetts?
Aye.
Councilmember Schwedhelm?
Aye.
Councilmember Sawyer?
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming?
Aye.
Councilmember Alvarez?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rogers?
Aye.
Mayor Rogers?
Aye.
That motion passes
thank you,
with
Council.
7 ayes.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 9.3. It's the mayor's appointments to county, regional, and state positions. I believe so. I can do all 9 of these in one go on this motion and then ask the council for approval, correct?
Yes, that's correct. Thank you.
Okay, so for the Association of Bay Area Governments General Assembly, we are required to have the mayor as the primary position. And my motion is for the alternate to be Councilmember Alvarez. For the League of California Cities North Bay Division, my motion is for Council Members Sawyer and Vice Mayor Rogers to be the city's primary representatives on that entity. For Holmes, Sonoma County, the city's primary representatives to be Vice Mayor Rogers and Councilmember Schwedhelm. For the Mayor's and Council Members Legislative Task Force, for myself and Councilwoman Fleming to be the city's representatives. For the Russian River Watershed Association, for Councilmember Alvarez with Councilmember Tibbetts providing support as the alternate. For the Water Advisory Committee, for Councilmember Schwedhelm as the primary with Vice Mayor Rogers as the alternate. For the County Health Action Committee, for myself to be the primary representative with Vice Mayor Rogers as the alternate. For the Library Advisory Board, for Councilmember Alvarez to be the primary with Councilmember Tibbetts as the alternate. And for the Santa Rosa Plain GSA, for Councilmember Schwedhelm to remain as the city's primary with Councilmember Sawyer as the alternate. Can I get a second from the council?
I'll second that. Thank you.
All right. Any discussion before we call the roll?
I do have a clarifying question.
Correct.
For Holmes, Sonoma County, not sure if that still exists. There's a new COC. What role? And there's only one city of Santa Rosa as a entitled jurisdiction.
Yeah, I apologize. We should have corrected that on the agenda. So my motion is for you to continue as the city's representative with the vice mayor as the alternate for it.
Thank you for that clarification.
Mm-hmm. Do we have I think we had a second. Any other discussion?
I did second.
All right, let's call the roll.
Councilmember Tibbetts?
Aye.
Councilmember Schwedhelm?
Aye.
Councilmember Sawyer?
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming?
Aye.
Councilmember Alvarez?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rogers?
Aye.
Mayor Rogers?
Aye.
That motion passes with 7 ayes.
And council members, I did to the best of my ability plot that out on a calendar to make sure that nothing that you've been assigned to conflicts with anything else you've been assigned to. But some of these things are a moving target. And so if there is a need for us to make some adjustments, please feel free to reach out and we can do that as well. And with that, we will go on. We have no approval of the minutes for item 10. We are to the consent calendar. Councilmember Sawyer, you were absent when the city attorney went over one discrepancy on the agenda. We have to actually go through a process of potentially adding item 11.11, the proclamation of emergency due to the glass fire. So I will entertain a motion from the council on whether or not to add that to tonight's agenda to be considered.
So moved.
And is there, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and if I may, what we'll need is a motion to make a finding of good cause. Again, what is defined as good cause under the policy is that as a result of exceptional circumstances beyond the control of the council, compliance with the 9-day notice requirement would impose a substantial burden on the city's ability to conduct its business or result in prejudice to a private person. That's the finding that the council will need to make in order to consider item 11.11.
Okay, and I thought I heard a motion from Councilmember Sawyer.
Yes, including the language just articulated by the city attorney.
Thank you.
And did I hear a second from Councilmember Schwedhelm?
Yes, you did.
Okay, are there any questions from the council on this item? All right, I'll take us really quickly to any public comment on this item. But I do not see any hands from the public, so we'll go bring it back and go to a vote.
Councilmember, I'm sorry, are we voting on the finding of good cause?
Correct, so we are voting
Okay.
on the finding of good cause to add item 11.11 to the consent calendar.
Thank you. Councilmember Tibbetts?
Aye.
Councilmember Schwedhelm?
Aye.
Councilmember Sawyer?
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming?
Aye.
Councilmember Alvarez?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rogers?
Aye.
Mayor Rogers?
Aye.
That motion passes with 7 ayes.
Excellent. Mr. Assistant City Manager, could you please read the full consent calendar with the addition of item 11.11?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Rogers. Item 11.1, Resolution North Village 2 Housing Allocation Plan Contract Amendment. Item 11.2, Resolution First Amendment to General Services Agreement number F001805 with Coney Incorporated. Item 11.3, Resolution Authorization to amend General Services Agreement F001318 Janitorial Supplies. Item 11.4, Resolution Approval of Purchase Order with Ramsey Blice Corporation DBA Leet Generators for the purchase of multi-quip DCA 220 kVA portable generators under a Sourcewell Cooperative Agreement. Item 11.5, a resolution approval of Fourth Amendment to General Services Agreement F001438 ADS Myers Incorporated. Item 11.6, resolution approval of use of design build procurement for charging infrastructure for the city bus electrical fleet electrification project. Item 11.7, resolution correction of clerical error to approved resolution for Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities AHSC program for the Roseland Village Housing Project. Item 11.8, resolution adoption of an extension agreement extending the memorandum of understanding for and on behalf of the employees in the City of Santa Rosa's Unit 5 police officers represented by the Santa Rosa Police Officers Association effective January 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2021. Item 11.9, resolution adoption of an extension agreement extending the memorandum of understanding for and on behalf of the employees in the City of Santa Rosa's Unit 9 Police Safety Management, represented by the Santa Rosa Police Management Association, effective January 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2021. Item 11.10, resolution extension of proclamation of existence of a local emergency relating to the threat to community health posed by COVID-19. Item 11.11, resolution extension of proclamation of existence of a local emergency relating to 2020 glass fire. And item 11.12, resolution extension of proclamation of local homeless emergency.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions from council members on the consent calendar? Okay, seeing none, we will go to public comment. If folks have a comment on the consent calendar, please hit the raise hand function on Zoom. You'll have 3 minutes to discuss the items. And Madam City Clerk, I'm not seeing any. Do we have any voicemail public comments tonight?
Yes, we do. Did you want to hear it before we take the live public comment?
Yeah, I just saw a hand pop up from Bonnie. Let's go ahead and hear from Bonnie, and then we'll move on to the live public or the voicemail public comment. Go ahead, Bonnie. You've got 3 minutes. Can you hear us and can you speak?
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me all right?
Yep, go ahead.
Great, thank you very much. And thank you for this opportunity to address the council. I appreciate it very much. I just wanted to say something regarding the item 11.12. It's the extension of the proclamation of emergency, homeless emergency in Santa Rosa. This, I hope everybody understands, this is the 48th extension of this proclamation of emergency. And it used to be that every 30 days, the council needed to review that. Now it's every 60 days. And it's very impactful to me that we have really this situation that's now becoming status quo. My understanding was that the council did this because it enabled the city to procure funds from the state to help with the situation. And I hope that's true, even though that wasn't reflected in the staff report under fiscal impact. You know, I know that everybody's doing the best they can, but I'm hoping that with the construction now of a new council, this is a new year. There are new members on the council that, you know, maybe this is an opportunity to really feel the impact of this and to take us an opportunity to rethink some of our strategies and to rethink some of our commitments, you know, because there's new people and maybe there's not, you know, people aren't so wedded to programs or certain things that perhaps have not performed quite so well. So I just wanted to bring that up, and I just wanted to make that statement and hope that we all have an opportunity to really feel this and to maybe rethink it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments, Bonnie. And just so you know, and the public knows, we do have a full study session on our homeless services coming up on February 9th as well. So I hope you'll join us for that discussion at that time. Dina, do we want to go on to the recorded comments?
You bet.
Consent items 11.5 and 11.8, 11.9. Dwayne DeWitt from Roseland. There is an item discussing the Portland Loo 11.5, stating that the compensation will be a total amount of $2.5 million after a $28,000 increase. If this is that steel restroom that's been locked ever since it was put up in front of the City Hall Annex at 94 Santa Rosa Avenue, the public's getting ripped off in a big way. If this is truly that Portland Loo, it's a racket. You know what? Any loo that costs $2.5 million is a racket. You've got porta potties down by Fremont Park for the bums and hobos there to go use for free. So why don't you just put porta potties around the town and save the taxpayers a couple of $1 million? You've got porta potties at the parks. Over in the Southwest, Bear Farm has never had the restrooms open since the opening day. They were locked the next day, and porta potties have been in use the entire time. Porta potties are at Southwest Community Park as the restrooms are locked. Stop throwing our money down the toilet on this situation. Regarding 11.8, The peace officers, the police department, should be respected for the work they're doing, but you should ask them for a wage freeze. We don't have enough money for lots of big raises like we keep giving the top management people. Thank you. Good New Year to you. Consent item 11.7, Dwayne DeWitt from Roseland. Regarding the Roseland Village Housing Project, there's no documents here in the city bulletin boards for the public to understand what the clerical error was that you folks claim to be correcting. And this is very important because there's an award amount of over $25 million of taxpayers' money involved. It would be nice if you folks would put these documents where they could be accessible to the public, even though our government is no longer really accessible due to this virtual exclusion that's been occurring with no physical location for our meetings. Something just is not right about this situation. I haven't been able to access the documents to read them, but that whole Roseland Village housing project is a boondoggle. It hasn't been going forward after the county taxpayers were flummoxed into buying a property that was still contaminated with toxics that now the taxpayers have to pick up the tab on. So this whole thing stinks to high heaven, and it would be nice if you, our elected officials in Santa Rosa, would step up and bring it into the light of day with open government. Thank you, and have a good new year.
That concludes the voice message public comments. Additionally, we had no voice or email public comments uploaded to the agenda.
Great, thank you, Dina. I'll go ahead and bring it back. Madam Vice Mayor, do you want to put a motion on the table?
Yes, I move items 11.1 through 11.11 and wait for the reading of the text.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to mention that we do have two items where we have a council member recusing, so we will need to take separate votes on those two items.
I only had in my notes, and remind me if I'm wrong, I only had 11.12 for Councilmember Tibbetts as a recusal. We can take that as a separate.
Correct, and then I'm
correct.
And then I'm recusing on the public hearing.
Okay, great. Thank you. Right. I apologize.
Great. So we've got a motion. We have a second. Do we have any additional comments or questions about the consent calendar from the council? Okay. Seeing no hands, Stephanie, let's go ahead and call the roll.
Councilmember Tibbetts?
Aye.
Councilmember Schwedhelm?
Aye.
Councilmember Sawyer?
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming?
Aye.
Councilmember Alvarez?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rogers?
Aye.
Mayor Rogers?
Aye.
That motion passes with 7 ayes.
All right, Madam Vice Mayor?
I move items 11.12 and waive further reading of the text.
Second.
We have a motion and a second from Councilmember Schwedhelm. Let's go ahead and call the roll.
Councilmember Schwedhelm?
Aye.
Councilmember Sawyer?
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming?
Aye.
Councilmember Alvarez?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rogers?
Aye.
Mayor Rogers?
Aye.
That motion passes with 6 ayes and Councilmember Tibbetts recusing.
Great, thank you. We will move on to item 12 on our agenda. That is public comment for non-agenda matters. It is past 5 o'clock, so we will roll right into it. For those in the public who would like to speak, hit the raise hand feature on Zoom. And as a reminder, because these items are non-agenda items, the council can't discuss them tonight. but we can ask staff for some clarification, or if we need to, can come back later for discussion. But this is an opportunity to really talk about things that are not yet on our council agenda. So I see our first hand will go to Emily. Emily, you'll have 3 minutes.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Good evening, members of council and the public. Happy New Year to all. I hope you had a safe and happy holiday season, and appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm Emily Ramey with Y Green Energy Fund. We are a leading PACE finance company based in Sonoma County. We were headquartered and born, if you will, in good old Santa Rosa, and headquartered there for many years before moving to Petaluma because we had grown. So I have been working with staff, very grateful for the opportunity to get our program on an upcoming agenda to allow for financing options for residential and commercial property owners to make important disaster preparedness, resiliency, energy efficiency upgrades to their homes and properties. The reason I'm speaking tonight is I have a few folks that are here to show support for bringing our program forward. Santa Rosa already has another PACE option in place, but Y Green is a leading PACE finance option that has not yet been approved by Santa Rosa and operates throughout Sonoma County and throughout the state of California. We have a few projects on the commercial side, the small commercial side, that are very, very eager to get funding finalized this month in January. And so if there was a way to expedite our agenda item, tentatively scheduled for late February, that would be very much appreciated, if only for these commercial property owners. It is especially important for them to schedule their debt and their cash flow for the coming year. And so they have voiced a opinion of wanting to work solely with Y Green's program, and they're sort of waiting on approval in order to move forward. And so I'm making the request simply on behalf of the small businesses that really want to use our program based on a reputation locally. And the difference between our program and some of the other commercial PACE options is that we have a very low project minimum threshold. And so we serve the small to true small medium sector of the commercial businesses in the state that are otherwise not served by existing PACE providers. And so thank you for letting me share that with you. Hope you can understand my need to relay that sense of urgency to you all. If there's anything you can do to help make that happen, I would greatly appreciate it. And I appreciate your time today. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Emily. Really appreciate you being here. We'll move on to Ankit. And I apologize if I just butchered your name, but you'll have 3 minutes. Go ahead and unmute and speak with the council.
Hi, council members. Happy New Year. My name is Ankit Panchal. I'm representing 365 Hospitality. Hope you guys can hear me fine. I would express just what Emily said. We are one of the property owners in Santa Rosa. We have a small hotel in Santa Rosa, which is called Hillside Inn. And, you know, we have been talking back and forth with Y Green to put solar, as well as we have some cap needs. And as you guys are very well aware that, you know, hospitality industry has been hurt the most since last year because of COVID-19. We've been struggling with cash flows and all this other stuff. And, you know, we were expecting this program, which would help us out with, you know, not just with solar, which will help us with utilities, but also some capital that can ride us through in this time. So if we can somehow get this agenda pushed earlier, it will greatly help us in our business. And once again, we have worked with Y Green at several of our other hotels, and they're a great company, and they have delivered things on time. And I'm here on call just to advocate to make sure that, you know, we get this done in a timely manner. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Thank you for your comments. Stephanie, I'm not seeing any other comments from our live public comment. Dina, do we have any voicemail recorded comments tonight?
No.
Okay. Then with that, we will keep moving on our agenda. We do not have any report items tonight, so we will move on to our public hearings. Mr. Assistant City Manager, do you want to introduce item 14.1 for us?
Yes, thank you. Item 14.1 is a public hearing, Tax Equity and Fiscal Responsibility Act of 1983, known as TEFRA, public hearing and issuance of bonds by the California Public Finance Authority in an amount not to exceed $50 million for DeTurk Winery Village, 8 West 9th Street, and 806 Donahue Street. Angela Morgan, Program Specialist, reporting. Or it looks like Megan Bassinger reporting.
I see both on here. We're
go.
happy to hear from both of them.
Good evening, Council. The item before you today is to request to hold a public hearing and approve the issuance of bonds for the DeTurk Winery Village project. Next slide, please. Jurisdictions are required to hold a public hearing, receive public comment, and approve bond issuance consistent with the Tax Equity and Fiscal Responsibility Act of 1983 and Internal Revenue Code. This action will not result in any fiscal impact to the general fund, and the financial responsibility shall be of the borrower. In this case, the borrower shall be Donahue 808 LP, and the developer is Meta Housing Corporation. Next slide, please. The proposed project will create new affordable housing units located at 8 West 9th Street and 806 Donahue Street within the downtown station area plan and near the Railroad Square, smart train station, shopping, food, and transportation. The site was previously approved as a market rate housing project, but has since obtained approval by the necessary entitlements to build 135 units as presented to you today. Next slide, please. Once the developer has obtained and closed on the necessary project financing to complete the project, it anticipates the commencement of construction by the fall of 2021 and the completion by July of 2023. The project will further Council Tier 1 goals by meeting housing needs within the city's jurisdiction. Furthermore, the housing units will be restricted to households with incomes ranging between 30 and 80% of area median income. Next slide, please. The recommendation before you today is to 1, conduct a public hearing under the requirements of the Tax Equity and Fiscal Responsibility Act of 1983 and the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 as amended, and 2, by resolution, approve the issuance of tax-exempt multifamily housing revenue bonds by the California Public Finance Authority in the amount not to exceed $50 million to finance DeTurk Winery Village at 8 West 9th Street and 806 Donahue Street. Next slide, please. This concludes the presentation, and we are happy to address any questions.
Thank you, Angela. Council, do we have any questions for staff? I'm not seeing any. Angela, I did have a question for you. We have seen a number of different projects at the council level where the income limit or the income restriction is for the application phase, but not a limit on how much that entity can charge once they have residents move in. So for example, there's at least one project that I know has come before this council where only folks who qualified had to be 35% of the area median income, but then they were charged 40% of the area median income once they actually moved in. Are there any types of guarantees for the council built into this that individuals will be charged an appropriate amount for the affordable unit that they are occupying?
It looks like Megan is actually going to address this question. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Rogers and members of council. I'll be happy to field this question. So in addition to the requirements that will be imposed by the California Debt Limit Allocation Committee, which is the bond issuer if the project is awarded bonds, the project is also subject to a regulatory agreement from the Housing Authority of the City of Santa Rosa, which initially committed funding to this project in June 2020. So we will be restricting the 133 affordable units with 2 managers units for 55 years. And that is for initial move-ins and for all subsequent tenants. And those are verified on a quarterly and annual basis.
Great. Thank you so much. Council, any other questions? Okay, we will go on to public comment.
Mayor, please be sure to open the public hearing.
Good catch, Dina. So we will open the public hearing and go on to the public comment portion of it. And I see Gregory is up first. Gregory, you'll have 3 minutes. Go ahead and unmute.
Greetings, this is Gregory Farron. My agency, SAVES, Sonoma Applied Village Services, actually is a tenant in the current building that's being converted. And we'll be glad to come out to end our lease before they need to get in and convert the building. But I'm a little concerned about a 30 to 80% spread on that. I mean, what I just read was they could basically put everybody in there at 79%. And I don't think that's really what the intention of trying to get affordable housing into Santa Rosa was. So I guess along with Chris trying to figure out a way of, making it permanent, I'd kind of like to see something that defines it as how much 30, how much 40, how much 50, how much 60. I mean, is anybody going to be below 79% and still be valid? Anyway, that's my comment.
All right, thanks, Gregory. Do we have any other live comments for our public hearing? Okay, seeing none, Madam City Clerk, do we have any recorded public comments?
Yes, we do.
Public hearing number 14.1. Dwayne DeWitt from the Sonoma County Housing Advocacy Group, speaking in favor of this item being approved for the bond sale to occur for the housing to be built at what's known as the Turk Winery Village. We have followed this project since its inception many, many years ago and hope that now it could be put on the fast track to actually be done. One would hope that the city staff and city elected officials will work hard to remove all the obstacles that may come up once this financing is approved, so these kind people trying to get the project done can finally go forward and get it built. It's very important during this new year where many people are facing the prospects of homelessness, that there be opportunities with more housing in the city center, in that Railroad Square and downtown area. This would be the first big positive step forward to get something done. After that, working on the cannery project on West 3rd Street would be another big step. So please approve this, work hard to get it done, and also have a good new year. All the best to you.
Mayor, that was the only voice message public comment for item 14.1, and there were no emails received by the 5 p.m. cutoff yesterday.
Great, thank you, Dina. I will close the public hearing then and bring it back to the council for discussion. Megan or Angela, could either of you chime in and help answer the question that we heard from Gregory during public comment about the spread of who's going to actually live in there? Is there any guarantees that the council has or that the community has that they won't just have entirely folks who are at 79% of area median income, but will be more equitable in their distribution?
Mr. Mayor, this is Angela. I will take that question. So in preparation for this tougher hearing today, I followed up with the developer, and the proposed units are 25 25 of the units to be restricted at 30% of area median income, 14 of the units to be restricted at 50% of area median income, 30 units to be restricted at 60% income, and 64 to be restricted at 80% of median income. So we do have various tiers of affordability programmed. These are just, it's under this proposal. It is a little preliminary. We have not closed on any financing. And as Megan indicated, there will be affordability restrictions in place for 55 years and ongoing monitoring and compliance as well.
Okay, so what I heard from you is 25 units at 30%, 14% at 50%. So you've got 39 out of the 133 units at under 50% of the area median income, and you have 94 units at 60% or above. 60 to 80, Is that correct? I just want to make sure I got my numbers right.
That is correct, yes. And then we have 2 unrestricted resident manager units for a total of 135.
Great. Okay. Are there any other questions from council? Okay, then I will go to Councilmember Sawyer. I believe you have this item. Councilmember Sawyer looks like he stepped away from the Zoom. Councilmember Schwedhelm, do you have the staff documents, and would you be able to make a motion for us?
Sure. I do have, I'm sorry.
Oh, there we are.
Thanks, Tom. I do have it, and I apologize. This has been an evening. Introduce a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Rosa approving the issuance of multifamily housing revenue bonds in an amount not to exceed $50 million by the California Public Finance Authority for the Deterrent Winery Village in accordance with Section 147F of the Internal Revenue Code and the Joint Exercise of Powers Agreement relating to said authority, and waive further reading.
Okay.
So I heard a motion from Councilmember Sawyer, a second from Councilmember Schwedhelm. Let's go ahead and call the roll.
Okay, Councilmember Tibbetts.
Councilmember Tibbetts is recused from this item.
Thank you. Councilmember Schwedhelm.
Aye.
Councilmember Sawyer.
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming.
Aye.
Councilmember Alvarez.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rogers.
Aye.
Mayor Rogers.
Aye.
That motion passes with 6 ayes and Councilmember Tibbetts recusing.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to item 14.2, Mr. Assistant City Manager.
Thank you. Item 14.2, public hearing streetlight pole banner policy 000-71 and associated banner fees. Rafael Rivero, Economic Development Specialist, reporting.
Can you hear me?
There you are. Go ahead.
Hi. Okay, great. All right. Well, good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year. Good evening, Honorable Mayor Rogers, Honorable Vice Mayor Rogers, and distinguished members of the Santa Rosa City Council. My name is Rafael Rivero. I'm with the Economic Development Division, and I am an Economic Development Specialist here at the city. So, the item before you this evening is in reference to the streetlight pole banners, policy, program regulations, application packet and associated fees, and our recommendation. Next slide, please. All right, so as I continue, I want to share a little bit of background related to this particular item. Currently, the City of Santa Rosa doesn't have a streetlight pole banner policy. Streetlight pole banners are typically used as promotional and placemaking enhancement tools in many cities, as well as their downtown districts and other areas. Over time, Santa Rosa has allowed banners citywide on city-owned streetlight poles on an informal basis for programs and projects directly associated with city departments and divisions, as well as for select nonprofit organizations that have worked through the city manager's office or have used pole banners prior to the recognized need to develop a citywide policy. Within the city, the demand for banners displays has generally been driven by the Economic Development Division for seasonal and event-related uses. An example of non-city use of a streetlight pole banner may be highlighted with the ones displayed in Railroad Square, the ones used during the Rose Parade, and the Wednesday night market, to name a few. New requests for banner placements have increased over the past few years from events and organizations such as Sonoma County Pride and the Santa Rosa Junior College, as well as placemaking interest from organizations such as the Museum of Sonoma County Library, and Memorial Hospital. The Economic Development Division staff, in coordination with the Public Works Street Maintenance Division, were charged with facilitating the locations, hardware purchases, scheduling, and installation of banners on streetlight poles. Installation and removal of the banners has been performed by Public Works, which has impacted their core services delivery over the extended period of time. With banner interest continuing to rise, namely from event producers, but also from neighborhood groups and nonprofit organizations, the proposed streetlight pole banner policy is intended to provide a clear and fair process where none has existed. While Santa Rosa Zoning Code 2038 regulates the temporary hanging banners not related to streetlight poles, and Council Policy 00-70 outlines the city's advertising policy and guidelines for promoting non-city services on city-owned facilities, equipment, social media sites, neither one address a comprehensive streetlight pole banner policy designed to establish uniform regulations and associated fees for banner placement by non-city entities. The adoption of the streetlight pole banner policy would fill this gap and would also establish program regulations and procedures, ensure safe use, establish an application process with associated fees, provide placemaking enhancement, and promotion of community-oriented activities. Next slide, please. So some typical banner uses would be for recognition, and we have the examples of Pride Month, U.S. Armed Forces, events such as Ironman, Wednesday Night Market, placemaking, the community benefit districts, which we now have 2 of them, seasonal historic recognitions, non-religious, and public facilities such as museums, libraries, junior college, and so on. Ineligible banner uses would, of course, violate the violation of the Santa Rosa City Code, violation of council's advertising policy, as that content relates to banners, activities not open to the general public, commercial, political, religious content, images or messages inconsistent with these guidelines. Next slide, please. While we were drafting the policy, we also had the opportunity to do some research, just like many of other staff members conduct. And we learned that other municipalities already have well-established banner programs. But the interesting thing I want to highlight here is that many of the municipalities that we spoke to are completely out of the banner installation process or business. Therefore, they have contracted with independent installers, and typically they also go through an encroachment permit process. And as you can see there in that slide, some of these municipalities, such as San Rafael, only has 2 streets designated for banners, and those are fairly inexpensive. However, we learned that through the other municipalities throughout the Bay Area, the cost could be perceived as significantly high to place banners on streetlight poles. Next slide, please. Okay, so that leads me to the process. And as part of the process and to exercise quality control and streetlight pole availability, proposed banners will be reviewed by city staff via the streetlight pole banner application packet for content and design, dates, and pole availability. Upon application, fees will be assessed and an encroachment permit will be issued to the applicant's installer. Following the installation, an inspection will be performed by a city staff member to ensure proper installation and the safety of the public. Through clear regulations and shifting the responsibility of the installation and removal of banners from our streets crews to the private sector, the banner program provides an accessible pathway for banner placement in support of placemaking and promoting community-oriented events. The city's role is to facilitate coordination among organizations, minimize scheduling conflicts, and ensure public safety. Banner applications will be available at on the events city website, here at City Hall, and obviously, obviously online. And there there's a brief diagram of the flow chart, application, permit issuance, and installation. Next slide, please. All right, so as we were drafting the policy, we identified 3 areas where fees will be applied: the application itself, at permit issuance, and for installation inspections. The $45 application fee and the sliding scale installation inspection fees are new and not currently listed on the city's fee schedule. As such, we are pulling these 2 fee elements from the schedule attached to the resolution as Exhibit B, and will bring them back as part of the city's general fee schedule update during the springtime. The encroachment permit and traffic control elements listed under permit issuance do exist in the city's current fee schedule and will move forward with this item with city's approval. And as you can see there, again, it's a flow chart regarding on how this permit process would play out once again when we return to the council during the spring to talk about those other additional fees. So there's the $45 fee, permit issuance $128, traffic control $147, and the inspection fee based on a sliding scale depending on the amount of banners that are installed. Next slide, please. Okay, so in regards to requirements and specifications, basically that's a layout of the measurements of the banner. There is an opportunity in the event that the private party seeks a sponsorship from a particular entity that allows that entity to have a logo placed on the banner, but it cannot be any bigger than 15% on the banner. But in addition to those requirements, the maximum time limit for banners on streetlight poles will be based upon availability and the purpose and promotional focus of the banner. Banners with general promotional messages and placemaking banners designating a geographic area of the city will not have specific time limits, but will be subject to periodic reviews following their installation. Banners that promote date-specific activities shall be limited to 30 days. The banners shall be installed not more than 25 days prior to the event and shall be removed within 5 days after the last day of the event. Since there were also some concerns regarding neighborhood groups and for folks who may be participating by listening, if they recall a previous banner program that was spearheaded by CAP many years ago, a city-funded neighborhood identification banner program, such as the original funded by CAP, is what I'm trying to say, would not be subject to the policy if the banners are considered city banners. In addition, the policy states that city-sponsored banners have precedence over non-city organization banners for the use of streetlight poles. So I just wanted to make that clear. Next slide, please. Okay, so as we were, again, working very diligently on this policy, we made tremendous outreach effort, and beyond reviewing the proposed policy and regulations with city staff, members from Public Works, Recreation and Parks, and others, we focused our outreach and policy development engagement efforts on event organizers such as the Wednesday Night Market, Winter Lights, and Sonoma County Pride. Staff also met with the Santa Rosa Metro Chamber and the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, the Downtown Action Organization, Railroad Square Association, the Museum of Sonoma County, Rosa business operators and representatives. We also delivered 2 presentations at the Downtown Subcommittee meeting where members from nearby neighborhoods were present and had the opportunity to ask questions. Staff also delivered a presentation in December to the Community Advisory Board and gathered feedback from members representing the various districts throughout the city. Next slide, please. All right, so before I read the recommendation, I just want to reiterate that the associated banner fees referenced in the recommendation refer to Exhibit B in the resolution that has been modified to list only the encroachment, permit, and traffic control fees. Again, the application fee and inspection fees will be brought forward to council as part of the city's fee schedule update in the springtime. With that, we'd like to make the recommendation by the Economic Development Division and Transportation and Public Works Department that the council, by resolution, adopt Council Policy 00-71, streetlight pole banners and associated banner fees. And as myself, we also have Tara Thompson, our Arts and Culture Manager, available for questions, and Gabe Osborne, which is our Development Services Division Director, as well, for responses.
All right, thank you, Rafael. I've got a question just right off the bat. My biggest concern with this item is the cutting out of neighborhood groups, volunteer organizations, or nonprofits that might not be able to raise the funds for the different fees that are being charged, or if they've already struggled, as we've seen time and time again, the difficulty in raising the funds to actually do the banners. But that doesn't mean that there isn't value within our community. I know that our historic districts in particular have worked really hard to do placemaking. And these banners do give neighborhoods a sense of community and a sense of place that we've been trying to coordinate and develop in Santa Rosa. How would this policy enable them to continue to do that work? And is there additional steps that we can take to make sure that this doesn't just become a privatized entity or a privatized process where groups with money are able to have access to the polls, but not others?
No, that's definitely, thank you for the question. That's definitely a good point to bring up. I did some research, and the cost to create these banners isn't necessarily tremendous. I have some quotes that I gather over time, and in many cases, from the 2 organizations that we did sort of a pilot run with, Sonoma County Pride, as well as there was another one. Some of the fees related to the creation of the banners were offset by the print shops. So they did in-kind services, and they also helped cover the cost of the banners.
Raphael, if I might jump in here just with something to add.
Yeah.
This is Tara Thompson, Arts and Culture Manager. I work with Raphael and have been a part of this policy development. And the thought process that we took with this policy was really to establish a process that didn't exist before for the placement of streetlight pole banners. It really doesn't change the access necessarily to those pole banners to neighborhood groups. There really wasn't a clear path for that prior to this policy. And I would encourage the consideration of some other resources for neighborhoods to get pole banners, light pole banners up, such as the previous programming that the Community Advisory Board offered through their neighborhood improvement grants or other types of programs like that. I believe that's how many of them were created in the past. And we really encourage that, but perhaps separate from establishing this policy, which sets forth the procedures that are needed. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I was on the Community Advisory Board 5-6 years ago when we first approved many of these neighborhood banners for funding. But my understanding too is that at that time, these neighborhood groups that came together and put together the applications to seek the funding then were able to rely on the city to put them up. And with this new process, we would be forcing them to find a private entity to do that for them and to raise the additional funds for encroachment and others, the other fees that we have in here. So I guess my question is twofold. One is, how do we make sure that they are still, how do we help foster that level of community involvement in this without putting additional barriers on people? And then just as a follow-up to the original banners that some of them are still up, they have been up. Who retains ownership of them at this point? And if there's a need to change, who would that be on the city at this point, or is it on those neighborhood groups?
I'll jump in, Raphael, just first, then please go ahead. I don't know exactly the ownership issue you referred to in terms of the banners that currently are up. I think it would probably be dealt with by the city. But the other thing I would add is that I think that I imagine a couple ways to address the cost issue, which is either for a city entity like CAB or others to provide grants for a banner program that cover the full cost, including installation. Or I also know that the policy, the way that it is currently written, exempts city banners from the policy. And so if the banners are considered city banners, then they do not fall under this policy and can be dealt with differently without the procedures and fees as established. So I just wanted to add that in as well.
And if I may, this is Rosa de la Rosa, Economic Development Division Director. Any banner that is up in the city currently predating this banner policy is the responsibility of the cities to remove. We place them and remove them. The Public Works Department has been fantastic at removing most of the banners and getting us back to a blank slate in preparation for this policy. I can also just give an update here to if Division Director Osborne wants to speak up. It is something we can look at for nonprofits through the encroachment fee. The encroachment fee is the method by which we would be able to provide permits and get the needed insurance for access to our poles. And I believe there is an opportunity to look at the nonprofit element through future fee updates. But if Mr. Osborne would like to comment on that, I would welcome it.
Good evening, Mayor Rogers and Vice Mayor Rogers. Absolutely, as we go through the process of taking a look at our encroachment permit fees through future fee updates, what we can look at is different programs for banners that go up. And we do have the ability to really kind of flesh that out and figure out if can be a different program for really the different scale of the banners going in or the different community groups that install those. That'll be very similar to what we're looking at for outdoor seating and some of the other more common items that we have seen in the more immediate past. So we will be taking a harder look at our encroachment permit fees in general to see the applicability and the total amount through that next fee update.
Great, thank you.
Vice Mayor Rogers. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Rafael.
Yeah, and I mean, we're willing to work with groups, nonprofit groups, neighborhood groups, and identify resources that might become available to cover the costs. And of course, in partnership with the city, it could potentially be sort of a city sponsor banner, and therefore this policy wouldn't apply in those particular cases. So therefore, the city staff would be installing the banners.
Right. Okay, I appreciate that. And I think that is a direction that I'd be interested in going. I'd like to hear public comment on it from other council members, that particularly for our neighborhood groups, to me, placemaking within our neighborhoods is a city function. And so for those that help with that feature, I would be much more comfortable if they were classified as city banners and we still did the installation and were able to help with those fees, particularly given that I do know many of the people who have worked on these projects in the past, and it does take quite a bit of coordination and volunteer time on their part. And I want to be respectful of that and appreciate that with our community. So Councilmember Sawyer, I'll come to you, and then Councilmember Alvarez, I'll come to you next.
Thank you, Mayor. My question is kind of almost a piggyback on to what you've just been discussing. As far as I will say with placemaking, I would hope that we could come up with a special consideration for our neighborhoods that choose to have banners up. My question, and also I want to thank everyone that had anything to do with this banner policy, because as simple as it may sound, there's nothing easy about coming up with a policy for banners. And so special thanks to everyone involved. I know that this took a great deal of effort and time. My question has to do with aesthetics. Especially with the placemaking, those neighborhoods are not going anywhere. I mean, they're going to be there for quite some time. And the banners could, unless they choose to change the image of their banner or the colors or whatever, they will deteriorate over time. And so I'm curious about, and that's true with both the public facilities and the placemaking banners, which could have a fairly long life, possibly. So who will be managing the aesthetics? Who will be managing the condition of those banners as they age and there becomes a need to change them out or repair or replace? How is that going to be handled?
Well, yeah, the purpose of this is to better control and monitor the banners that are up. Rafael, I'll give this back over to you, but I think one of the issues that we did note was that banners were placed up, but they were not monitored. There was no department that was in charge of it, and they were not monitored, and so they did not come down. And through this application process, we would know where the banners are, what the duration of the banners are, the banner placement would be, and then also the requirement through the encroachment permit as to the duration. So who the installer is, when they would be putting them up and when they would be taking them down. So again, it takes the onus off of us to decide when something comes up, and it becomes more of a programming and scheduling process. So Rafael, if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, and again, just to reiterate, the goal of the policy is intended to provide a clear and fair permit process where none has existed before. But in an event where such group receives the funding, and again it turns into a sort of a city sponsor banner installed by the city, I would think that the city has oversight of those banners, and over time, if they begin to get old and faded, that the city would eventually need to pull them down or.
Yeah, so again, it's, I will tell you, it's taken, I think, about 8 years perhaps to get us to the point of having some kind of a process for banners, for any kind of policy for banners. It has been batted around from between multiple departments. I think it might even be for 12 years. So maintenance, again, is something that we do not want to, as a city, be responsible for. Scheduling took a long time through Public Works. It took Public Works away from other core duties in order to put them up. Maintenance was another thing that diverted Public Works crews from their core duties. And so again, both in terms of placement and maintenance is something that we wanted to privatize and put onto the to the private sector. Again, we noted that we need to look more closely at neighborhood banner programs, and I think we can find some compromise in that, but they're not the main requesters of banner placement. Number one, they're a minority, so we think we can find something that would be suitable. And number two, short of, because we've had no banner policy, nobody has had access unless it has been a city department taking responsibility solely for those banner placements. And so again, it's an equity issue, equity access issue.
And if I'm sure also that it's going to be, as time goes on, we will start to learn what different materials last and what materials do not last. It's a, given how long it did take to do this, and I understand why. So we'll just, I think that the community or the individuals that see a banner that is in decline or has been, potentially vandalized, that will let the community kind of inform us and take care of it as necessary. But there is something to be said for maintaining the quality of the banners, because we've all been in communities where the banners were up there probably 4 or 5 years too long, and it really detracts from their original intention to gain a respect for a particular part of their city and their neighborhood. So I think that maintaining the quality of the banners is as important as putting them up in the first place. So I appreciate it. We'll let it play out and let time dictate what we do and how we do it.
Thanks, Councilmember. Councilmember Alvarez.
Thank you, Mayor. First and foremost, thank you for the energy that you put into this project. I know it has been about 12 years in the making. Rafael Rivero, I believe the last time that I seen you were running down Sebastopol Road with a couple of those banners tucked in your arm, trying to show them to different business owners. So I definitely appreciate your efforts. You mentioned that you had done some comparables with the cost to produce these banners. Would you know any of those numbers off the top of your head?
Yeah, I mean, some of them, I listed them on that slide. I'm not sure why the city of San Rafael is so inexpensive, but again, they only allowed banners to be displayed on 2 particular streets. City of Napa has a very robust program, but they have a fee of $178, and they go through an encouragement process. City of San Francisco, of course, much larger. As soon as you drive in, there's banners everywhere. They have a very robust program, but the city is broken into various districts. So some of those districts manage their own banner policies and such. And on one of the districts that I spoke with, it's $275 for 20 banners, and then it goes up from there on.
So the fees that you stated in the report or the presentation, these are the fees that the printing company is charging.
Oh, the printing company.
Yes.
Well, actually, no. I'm sorry. I do not have those specifically, but I will tell you that the Sonoma County Pride folks went through this pilot phase while we were putting this together. They went through an encouragement process, and they got assistance from a particular print shop. I don't have the figures specifically, but they were able to install 52 banners last year. They did it since they had such a great experience and great success. They went ahead and placed another 52 banners again from the 1st of June to the end of June. this in 2020. And the DAO went ahead and followed suit and installed 72 banners just recently during the month of December. And Rebel Square has also installed now 42 banners with the help of another print shop that again is providing a discounted rate and just basically helping them in a sense. So
with the in-kind contribution, right?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And the reason I ask is I am interested in the idea that you came up with, which is the city sponsored, helping with the paying the fees for the neighborhoods. And to correct, or actually to clarify, the neighborhoods would be omitted from this policy. Am I correct in saying so?
No. I mean, if again, the neighborhood is working closely with the city and eventually receiving funds through a grant or something very similar to what existed in when the CAP provided this grant for the creation of these banners, then if there's obviously a partnership involved, then Raisa, Tara, feel free to jump in, then it would be some sort of city-sponsored banner. Mm-hmm. Therefore, that the policy wouldn't apply in this case.
Yeah, what I was thinking just off the top of my head, a hybrid program where we do have the name of the neighborhood such as Roseland. And if we could have a sponsorship from one of the local businesses, which would be approved by the neighborhood themselves, that would be might be a way for there to be covering of the fees. But again, it would have to ultimately be the approval of the neighborhood. But nonetheless, I do thank each and every one of you for your time and dedication to banner program. I believe it adds to the pride of the neighborhoods that we live in and the beauty of the city of Santa Rosa. And to have the banners surround City Hall of the 11 different communities, I think speaks greatly to who we represent and what we're here to do. So thank you all.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I just want to add a little bit more clarification on the cost of the banners. So if all things considered, somebody wanted to use all of our pole banners and when we adopt the additional fees of banner inspections, for example, the potential could be that someone might be charged up to $545 for all elements of the fees. That would be equivalent to what Vallejo charges, for example. The likelihood, however, is lower because for example, in community benefit district areas or any area where an association or a group wants to pull an encroachment permit and do multiple banners through that permit, including that traffic control fee, they could do that. So it is not every time a banner goes up that they would be charged every single one of these fees. It is only when someone new has something that would be not covered under a pre-existing encroachment permit or traffic control fee. The other piece of it is there are only certain areas where we have the hardware to put it up. The most common place where people want to have banners, again for events mostly, has been in the downtown area. And there are a finite number of poles available for banner placement in the downtown area. The second area of interest has been on Santa Rosa Avenue. We have an interest in placing hardware in Roseland area because it is such a key commercial corridor for us. There has not been hardware there. The city may pick that up. Economic development may pick that up again to allow for better access. But at any point of the way, it may be that there's either shared costs or reduced costs based on who's pulling the encroachment permit or what encroachment permit exists. So the maximum cost, yes, would be $545, but the average cost would be much less than that.
Okay, Councilmember, are you all done with your questions? Great. I'll move on to Councilmember Schwedhelm.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Rafael, for the presentation and the rest of the team for keeping on this for the last more than decade. Rafael, was there any discussions about a waiver fee application process? In other words, we have right now the current policy, the way the draft policy, it gives certain discretion for the city manager and or his or her designee. Was there any discussion about a fee waiver process, just adding to that discretion, or one, whether it be a neighborhood group or a nonprofit or anyone else, if they say, we can't afford this, okay, give us the reason why, and have a city staff person who understands the competing potential interest of timing, remove all the other things, that they could have that, make that decision. Any discussion about that process being set up or added to this?
Thank you, Councilmember Schwedhelm. That's actually a good question, and that was not discussed.
Okay, I appreciate that. I would be supportive of something like that, because again, I think if we start just saying neighborhoods or nonprofits, whereas if this is the process for a fee waiver and it rests with this person, so it's transparent, everyone understands what the process is, I think it might be an overall benefit for the city, and understand, yes, there is a way, if your group or individual cannot afford it, it can still happen in this community. So that's my own question and comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Tibbetts.
Thank you, Chris. You know, I hope my comments don't seem negative about the program. I think that it's great. I love the placemaking concept. I love the idea of bringing identity to certain neighborhoods and that sense of pride and belonging. But I'm just really, really reluctant to support a program, as Raisa, I think, was alluding to, that is going to divert public works staff greatly in a way that they're not, you know, that the program's not getting compensated for. And the reason why I bring this up, folks, is we have needles in parks, graffiti on the Prince Memorial Greenway. We've got more pressing issues that our public works folks should probably be dealing with the limited resources that we have. So, I mean, I'm supportive of the program. If we're going to be doing, I agree with Tom that there should be a transparent and universally applied formula. I don't think it should be a staff person's discretion about who to give waivers to. But I like what Tara said, where we maybe direct that person over to the community advisory board. It then becomes a meaningful way to engage the community advisory board. And they can, you know, make these determinations as a publicly noticed, transparent body who's going to be getting the CAB grants to do these sorts of banners and placemaking. But I can't support a program that's going to cost us money and take public works staff away from things that are frankly more important to the community.
Mayor, can I?
Yeah, go ahead, jump in, Tara.
That? There may be public works costs for existing city banners or any future city sponsored banners, but I will say that this policy greatly takes the load off of public works by shifting it onto the private sector. So it is a huge step in the right direction, albeit perhaps not perfect yet.
And that was, sorry, through the mayor, that was my take, Tara, but I just wanted to express my feelings to the council, because I kind of see it going in a direction that could cost us staff time and you know, financial resources.
And Mayor, if I could chime in response, as the Director of Transportation and Public Works, this policy does go a long way at shifting that responsibility to the private sector. Back in 2018, we actually, as part of our staff reduction program, eliminated the staff members that were associated with our banner program. That doesn't mean we don't have staff that are capable and able to do the work, but we did have to reduce our program back at that time. And this was the area, based on your comments, Councilmember Tibbetts, that we elected to in essence, sacrifice for other programs that were more core and more focused on the council's priorities. So I thought it was appropriate just to chime in at this point on the public works side.
All right, thank you, Mr. Assistant City Manager. Councilwoman Fleming.
Thank you, Mayor. I got a couple of questions. One is sort of related to what Councilmember Sawyer was talking about the degradation of banners over time. And just curious to know, you know, how long does it take a banner to look kind of careworn in a way that would degrade the neighborhood or the business corridor in which it were to be placed?
I think the old CAB neighborhood-oriented banners have been up for maybe 10 or so years, it's been a long time. Those are clearly degraded. We tried in economic development when we designed and purchased seasonal banners we tried to move them around every sort of quarter, or if not 3 times a year. And we found that we could place banners up probably 3 years in a row before they started to look a bit worn. So I would suggest it would be less than 3 years. I would also suggest that through this program, allowing more people access to the polls, we will not have the issue of placing banners up that would not eventually come down after the event. Because again, economic development will no longer be placing banners up just to have placemaking banners.
So what I'm wondering is if it wouldn't be less onerous in the long run to have a solution as part of this ordinance, wherein we said, you know, a particular banner can be up for a sum total of, like, let's say 18 months or something like that, to be generous. Fine if you put it up for 3 months, you know, every year, then you could do it for 6 years or whatever. Your recommendation would be on the amount of months. It sounded like you were closer to 12 months in your recommendation, and I defer to that. But my concern is putting forth something, you know, that's going to be a problem down the road, and just sort of waiting and seeing, and then, you know, burdening staff by saying, hey, we're getting these complaints about these raggedy street pole banners. Can we make a policy to address that?
Well, I believe the encroachment permit is generally for 1 year. Is that correct, Gabe?
That is correct. So based on our current city code, the encroachment permits typically do not go beyond 12 months. They can with a specialized agreement, but under most circumstances, they would have a maximum of 12 months.
Okay. And that's 12 months for that permit, but not 12 months for that flag, meaning that someone could turn around and get another one. I guess I'm just trying to say that I would like to see, you know, a limitation on the duration that you can fly a particular flag. You can replace it and put another one up, but not have the same one up for 10 years. That just seems like kind of defeating the purpose. But
yeah, the banners would be tied to that encroachment permit, number one. Number two, I think the only place other than the old cab neighborhood banners where we see banners that have been placed up a long time or may potentially continue to be placed up for a long time is, for example, Railroad Square. The Railroad Square Association has placed their banners up, though, but we are encouraging them through their community benefit district to do seasonal banners and to change them.
I guess I'm just wondering if it wouldn't be simpler to come up with a policy here rather than deal with this as a one-off, so that when somebody signs up for this, you know, their first permit, if their first permit's only going to last them, you know, 6 months or whatever, that starts ticking, you know, those 6 months that it's up for takes off whatever the X amount that staff recommends is the total time, so that we're not just sort of like playing one-off whack-a-mole. But it sounds like that's part of this, and maybe I don't have a great understanding of it. My other question, unless anybody wanted to jump in about that.
If I may, I just wanted to note that the policy as in the current draft does have a provision that the city manager may reduce a time limit in consideration of specified factors, including the physical condition of the banner. So this does give the city manager that ability to require that a banner be taken down if needed.
Yeah, my concern would just be that the discretion gets taken out of it, that we don't have, you know, extra burdens and some people feeling like one group is getting treated differently than another. You know, it just sort of creates problems. The other question I had is again about discretion, which is how will, and perhaps this comes because the whole, you know, idea of scoring cannabis applicants is so burnished in my mind from my first days on council. But what will we do if we have multiple applicants for the same street polls for the same time? I heard that staff will, you know, make their decision based on, you know, the appearance and the quality. But will this be a process that's transparent? How will we deal with conflicts and so forth?
I'll jump in. Well, that's a really good question. And I mean, there's a lot of polls available. We would, do the best we could for availability to accommodate those parties, given the approval of the application and such. But there's a lot of polls available. So I think we could be able to accommodate if the applicants.
You be developing or have you developed criteria in addition to graphic design quality, like the benefit to the community, the general, accessibility of the events or stuff like that, like things that would be easy to sort of for the public to understand why one thing would get chosen over another when they can't all be accommodated?
Yeah, we do have some experience in this, in that we have had events where, so for example, we have some legacy banners that were allowed to go up despite the fact that we didn't have a policy. Wednesday Night Market is the one I was thinking of. Wednesday Night Market lasts all summer and had historically had banners placed up. Ironman would come in twice a year in the summer. They would go up on some of the poles, and then so they would take down the market banners, put the Ironman banners up, take them down, so there was a coordination, and we recognize that there is going to be a coordination of events. Number one, we do have multiple events that can happen in a given week, and they want some of it. So with enough banners, we've also done it to where we will assign certain poles to certain groups, and then so that they can all be up at the same time. And then we have done it to where, depending on the timing, we'll take one down and put them back up. So that's the experience that we've had thus far. We haven't had so many requests waiting for this that indicate that we're going to have multiple requests that will necessitate something other than that, but we think that we can address it.
So banners aren't as exciting as cannabis, I suppose, to prospective applicants. Thank you so much for your responses.
I just want, Mayor, if I may, real quick. When the Sonoma County Pride Awareness Month came about last year, the installer, and by the way, all the DAO, Rebel Square, Sonoma County Pride have used their own installer, which again, the work hasn't been performed by our services or our public works crew. And once again, they went through an encouragement process as part of the pilot run for this program. So they were able to, the installer for the Sonoma County Pride rolled up the Ironman banners and kept them stored. And then as soon as the Awareness Month finished, they were able to replace, to put up the Ironman banners again. So, thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Are there any other questions from council? All right, let's go on to public comment, and I will open the public hearing on this item. So first up, we will have Cher, followed by Gregory. So Cher, go ahead and unmute, and you'll have 3 minutes for public comment.
Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, good evening, Mayor Rogers and City Council members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Cher Ennis, and I'm a longtime resident of the West End. Regarding aesthetics, dependent on location, the neighborhood banners looked great for about 5 to 7 years. Material longevity has come a long way in the last decade, so that time frame might be able to be extended. I'm asking you to specifically exempt neighborhoods from the financial aspects of this new banner program and have the installations and removals continue under the auspices of the city. Unlike other commenters who wrote in, I ask that this be a permanent exemption. Neighborhood banners are distinctly different from commercial or events-related uses. They'll typically go up for a long period of time and don't need to be taken down or put up repeatedly in a short time frame. The banners give a sense of the flavor of each neighborhood. They let visitors know what part of the city they're in and show that we care about the place where we live. The neighborhoods and the historic districts in particular should be a source of pride for the city and should be supported in this small way. I don't think many of the neighborhoods will be able to come up with the costs proposed, which could easily mean that only the wealthier neighborhoods would have the banners. That would reinforce a toxic belief system we've all heard about for years. So please, let's make sure that doesn't happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Cher. Gregory?
Good evening. My name is Gregory Farron, and I want to second Cher's comments just a minute ago. But what I want to do is also take you a little bit different direction, and that's about fairness and equity. Both Rafael and Rosa talked about that, and you've spent quite a while trying to guarantee equity around the financial aspect of it, how this can't become and how you want to prevent it from becoming a kind of rich and poor battle over who gets to put banners up. But I want to add one more dimension to it and ask you how you're going to deal with it, which is it's kind of an insider-outsider whose message gets to be approved. You set some guidelines on, sort of encouraging the old messaging. Everything we've already thought of as not very political and certainly supportive. But what happens when a group comes in that has the money to pay for it and has a process knowledge and has a message you don't like, has a message that is offensive to people? What happens to that permit in its process? I have not heard anything about an appeal out of the staff decision. I think there should be one. But more than that, I'd like to see a little more clarity on what you think is not going to be approved. It's clear that if it's divisive to a huge degree, and we've identified religion or, really radical politics, but as you all know, I'm sort of on the edge of always being a little more radical and a little more, innovative than most people. And I would imagine there'd be some issue, some group, some message that wants to put it on a banner, on a pole in the city, and won't be. Beyond not having the money to pay for it, it's not going to be approved. And I'd like to see that minimized to a great extent. Thank you.
Thank you, Gregory. I'm looking to see, and I don't see any additional hands for Leslie. Go ahead. Go ahead and unmute. You'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor Rogers, and thank you to the city council members for hearing about banners. I second the call for the permit exemption to be a permanent exemption for the city neighborhoods. I want to encourage neighborhoods to have placeholders. I want to encourage neighborhoods to have an identifier as well as something that they're proud to have. And I want to encourage more neighborhoods to do that as more neighborhoods are going to hopefully spring up in our city. So, and I do feel that that is very different than events or business organizations, as they may be like the DAO or the Railroad Square Association. The Railroad Square Association just put up new banners and they look lovely. I would also encourage maybe a policy in this that would have permanent placeholders for an association like the Railroad Square Association or the DAO for, let's say, a certain number of their poles to be specifically for them. So that they could retain those poles, retain those banners, maybe switch them out once a year. But when an event comes in, that they don't have to take down all of their banners, that their placeholder is still there, because I think that it's a value for us as a city, for our tourist population. to see that as a placeholder, as well as to see the event coming in and having that shout out and that promotion. So I think that some other things to address in this is that I don't know that the CAB necessarily has a grant put aside for banner installation or for banner production. And so that might want to be coordinated before a policy like this comes forth. Even though I know that there's been a lot of work on this policy. I can remember it being talked about for a number of years. So, and I also want to give a shout out for the sponsorship, and that word just keeps kind of getting floated around, but not necessarily defined as to what a city-sponsored banner would be, and that would be a great definition to have in this policy. Lastly, last 30 seconds is to define the time frame for applying for the banner placement. Because right now we say that there is a number of days that you can have the banners up and have them beforehand and afterwards, but when can I apply? Can I apply a year beforehand or 2 years beforehand for those polls? Thank you very much. I've used all 3 minutes, first time ever. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Leslie. Appreciate that. Do we have any other comments from the public on this item? Seeing none. Dina, do we have any recorded voicemail comments?
Yes, we do. Oh, no, we don't. Surprise.
All right, great. I will go ahead and close the public hearing then and bring this back to the council for discussion. So there were a couple of questions there that I'm hoping staff can respond to. One of them was the question of what is the objectionable content, and is there an appeal process if somebody is denied? One of them that I heard was specifically about whether or not there's funding within CAB. So who wants to jump in and try to take some of these to start?
Well, I will say in terms of content, we do defer to the pre-existing city policy on advertising, which is policy 000-70. And I don't recall when that was put into place, but I think it was about 7 years ago, perhaps 5 years ago. And then it outlines that content that violates that policy includes, I'm sorry, I'm just sort of blanking right now. It includes political items, pornography, guns, drugs, that type of thing. And then the other thing is because these are for generally public good, unlike the advertising policy, we are looking to not have strictly commercial oriented sales type of advertising on the banners. We do allow for, for-profit, commercial entities to be sponsors on the banners, but we don't want them to say, shop at Safeway or something like that.
Right, thank you. And the offenses, if that's what we'll call them, it's consistent with the policy that we have for advertising on our bus system, for example.
That's correct. Right. That's correct. We defer to that policy in this policy.
Well, right. Social media.
And if somebody has it denied, do they have an appeal process? Can they go to the city manager? Or is it just a blanket denial from the staff member who was working on that?
Well, I mean, we would likely work with them on why it was denied and see if we can get that back into compliance. And then thereafter, yes, we do state that the city manager can override on a number of things.
Perfect. And then the question about CAB grants, if somebody could take that one.
Could you remind me what that question was?
I think some of the discussion has relied on the assumption that the Community Advisory Board would allocate funding from the community improvement grants for some of our neighborhood groups or whatever have you. Can you just remind us when that process starts? And I already know the answer is that no, there's not a clear pot of money for this within CAB, but those community improvement grants, could you remind us when that starts and sort of if neighborhood groups or nonprofits would be eligible?
Well, unfortunately, we don't have a member of CAB here, and I'm not familiar enough with their schedule for when they review grant applications. But to your point, there is not a dedicated fund specific for this, and I think it is at the pleasure of the CAB board, if I recall. So unfortunately, I can get back to you on that, but I don't know the specifics of the timing.
Okay.
And Mayor, if I may,
Raphael.
I don't know if the community promotions grant would necessarily apply to in a situation as such. I don't know, Tara, the criteria for those.
Yes, that could be considered a part of that application. It has been a part of many organized events requests to the city through the Community Promotions Fund in the past. So that would be an eligible use of those funds if that program continues in the future.
Okay. Any further questions from the council on this? All right, not seeing any. We will go ahead and lay a motion on the table. And I do believe, Councilwoman Fleming, that this is your item.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move a resolution of the City Council of the City of Santa Rosa adopting Council Policy Number 000-71 titled Street Light Pole Banners and Associated Banner Fees, and waive further reading of the text.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilwoman Fleming, a second by Councilmember Sawyer. Councilwoman, I'm wondering if you will entertain a friendly amendment to clarify in the policy that neighborhood banners count as city-sponsored banners.
Indeed, I will.
Councilmember Sawyer, are you okay with that?
Yes.
Okay, great. Is there any further discussion from the council? All right.
Through the mayor.
Okay, go ahead, Jeff.
Could I just ask staff what the additional costs of relating to a city-sponsored banner would entail in terms of staff time and money?
I guess I would need clarification in terms of would we be required to actually print the banners and deal with design elements? So what is your intention in that? And then I would ask Assistant City Manager Nutt to weigh in on the ability of Public Works to install neighborhood banners and to add to that maintenance piece.
Yeah, my intent is not for the city to bear the cost of creating the banners, but continuing how we have in the past of working with neighborhood organizations that do raise the funds or get the CAB grants to help install those and get through these now permit fees that we are in the process of discussing. So Director Nutt, could you jump in?
Yes, and I think given the nature of what a neighborhood banner is, as was stated by many of the community members as well as council members, they tend to last 5 to 7 years because of the particular locations and the fact that they're not rotating with different images or different programs. I don't think it's going to be a huge burden if those particular banners remain with the city and have Public Works continue to do the installation. My concern and the issues that we had predominantly were the constant and consistent rotation of banners that really became the staff level burden for us. And so if the council members feel that this is that they approve of the amendment, then we can certainly incorporate that into our routine.
Through the mayor, Director Nutt, would it help you to have us place a minimum time limitation for rotation to reduce impacts to your staff?
Well, I think
I'm just wondering if there's go ahead.
I was going to say, Councilmember Tibbetts, thank you for suggesting that. I think within the policy where we will have to address these is the ongoing maintenance. And should a particular banner become damaged or look tattered or get hit or knocked off, then we'll be addressing those as needed through the course of the community. Given the fact that we don't have a large proliferation of community-oriented banners right now, I don't see that being a major lift or major additional lift if we start seeing an interest in having banners on every pole within a neighborhood. We start to see a substantial increase in the numbers. That may have a direct impact on our staffing availability. And so I think at this point, given the current methodology that we're using to deploy banners, we can cover the staffing need. But I would say if we start to see a substantial change, we may have to ask additional questions of council in the future.
Okay, thanks for helping with that. I hope that I don't think it's going to come to that, like you were saying, but if it does, I hope you will. Just because for me, it's a priorities question as far as what your staff is tackling on a daily basis. But thank you. You helped me with this one.
Okay, any other discussion from council? And Madam City Attorney, are you clear on the motion?
I am not. I would like a little more clarification on what we're carving out. So, and do you want it to be an express exemption from the policy? Do you want it to simply be that fees will be waived? You want it, I gather that your preference is to have city staff install those banners and maintain them and take them down at the appropriate time. And I would suggest that we clarify what we're carving out of this policy. And does it include just placemaking banners? But if a neighborhood is going to have an event, will the city also take on the cost of installing event banners as well? So I guess those are the two areas. Or three areas? Do you intend a waiver of any application fees and installation and encroachment fees? Do you intend city staff to have responsibility for installation and maintenance and removal? And do you intend it to include both placemaking banners and any other banner that is requested by a neighborhood association?
Yeah, my intention is the waiver of the fees for the application and the installation and the encroachment, as well as, yes, the city doing the installation and having that responsibility. No for events. I'm specifically talking about placemaking banners within our community, which I do see as a core city function. And if we're having volunteer groups step up to help us to put together those banners, I think the city should have that role in it.
Mayor, could I further clarify that question?
Sure.
Just simply because you said throughout the city as opposed to neighborhood at that point.
Sorry,
is there a difference between neighborhood and business district, for example?
So for me, it's the volunteers for the neighborhood groups that I'm most concerned about. For the business districts, they have dedicated funding that they've been able to go out and to secure, which is a little bit different than a volunteer effort. But if we hear that concern from business districts, perhaps they could bring that to us for a revision to the policy down the road. But the concern that I've heard with this policy coming forward is specifically from neighborhood groups, the historic districts and folks who volunteer their time.
Thank you for the clarification.
Mayor, can I clarify one thing? So the way that I heard some of the comments, I think from council as well as some of members of the public, was to consider the neighborhood identifier banners, consider those city banners so that they're exempt from the policy. And that might help with like not needing to deal with waiver of fees, because if they're exempt from the policy, they don't fall within the policy regulations.
Yeah, and that was how I originally phrased it. My one concern in hearing Sue lay it out is exempt from the policy. I want them to still have the ability to put those up and for us to partner. So if the intent is for us to have a policy that we can rely on for predictability, my concern is the additional fees and having to go out and find a private supplier to put them up. And so if we can waive them from those fees and retain responsibility at the city of putting the banners up with those neighborhood groups in partnership, that to me seemed like a more efficient approach. But I'm open to I'm open to other options.
And then I'd like to also confirm that you would be comfortable, that the council would be comfortable giving this direction, whatever we end up with, and that staff and my office could work together in putting the language into the policy, that you would delegate that responsibility to us.
And Councilwoman Fleming, I know you wanted to jump in here as well, so go ahead.
My question was really very trivial, which was that if we were to exempt we were to do a carve out, however the council decides to proceed, would we then, if the city maintained the responsibility of taking those up and putting them down, then if there were to be a private event or something that fell under the permit, then to take those down, could we make it such that the private company then has to do that taking down and putting up of the thing that's usually always there, if that makes sense?
I mean, I would say just to that point, we generally don't get special event producers seeking to place banners in residential neighborhoods. So that is that differentiation between commercial district and neighborhood. But yes, if that were the case, then that's what the expectation at this point would be.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Councilmember Sawyer.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, one can see why it took so long to put the policy together in the first place. It's these kinds of details that can extend the conversation. I'm curious about, as far as the neighborhood banners. Some of our neighborhoods are small. Some of them our historic districts are smaller than others. And some neighborhoods, like the JC neighborhood, is fairly sizable compared to the Burbank neighborhood, for instance. So I'm wondering if we should consider, let staff consider putting a limit to the number of banners that are used for the neighborhood. They could be quite numerous. And some of our neighborhoods also are bordered by major boulevards. And like the JC, for instance, has, Mendocino Avenue borders it for a considerable distance. So would those be the neighborhood banners, or would those be the event banners? There's, I'm not sure. I don't want to slow this down, but I think that we should have the ability to consider options in the future as issues come up. And this actually might be one of those more kind of a living and breathing document, as opposed to something that's set in stone, because it's bound to have, as time goes on, we're bound to have the need for making some of the changes. But I think that if we don't have some kind of limit to the number of banners for either a neighborhood association or a historic district, et cetera, there could be issues around fairness and equity that we either deal with now, or we let it start to play out and deal with it later. But I think it's going to be something that we are going to have to ultimately tackle. Thank you.
If it would help, Mr. Mayor, I think we can add a definition on neighborhoods versus commercial districts, one. And then I think we can clarify the neighborhood identifier banners as being placemaking banners that would be installed and maintained by the city. If I'm understanding Assistant City Manager Nutt correctly, and that these banners would not include special event banners, but would be limited to placemaking or identifier banners. And I think if we add that definition and then add that clarification, I'm hoping it would address the issues that City Attorney Gallagher brought up.
Yeah, and if I can just ask a question, because that sounds like a good approach to me, but the city does recognize neighborhood associations, and if if we wanted to, we could tie the definition to placemaking brought forward by those associations. And that would also encourage other neighborhoods that were interested in having the same ability to organize and create that apparatus.
We did think about that. Some neighborhoods have associations that are nonprofit, some don't. Some have commercial areas in particular have community benefit districts, others don't. So it brought up, again, that question of access and fair access in terms of resources for organizational abilities. And so we backed away from that.
Okay, that makes sense. Councilwoman Fleming?
I was simply going to say what my concern about fairness and access and advantaging already organized neighborhoods.
Okay. Yeah, I'm perfectly comfortable with the more broad suggestion that you made, Raisa. I hesitate to ask this again, but did that provide the clarity that you need, Sue?
Yes, that's sufficient. Thank you.
Okay, so as I heard it,
again that we may craft the language after this meeting.
That sounds good. And so I heard the motion from Councilwoman Fleming with the additional discussion here about neighborhood banners, which will be distinct from the commercial banners and event banners that John was asking about. Is everybody good? Great. Then Stephanie, if you could call the roll.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Tibbetts?
Aye.
Councilmember Schwedhelm?
Aye.
Councilmember Sawyer?
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming?
Aye.
Councilmember Alvarez?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Rogers?
Aye.
Mayor Rogers?
Aye.
That motion passes with 7 ayes.
And may I apologize for not catching this earlier. I just want to also confirm that this is with the amendment discussed by Raphael during his presentation, that this is taking, that it is going to, the fees are going to be limited to the encroachment and traffic control fees for now, with other fees to be determined at a later time.
That's my understanding.
All right.
Sounds like that's what the motion was.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Raphael and Raisa and Tara. We will move on now. We have no written communications, and we are on to our second public comment for non-agenda matters discussion. If there is anyone who would like to speak, go ahead and hit raise hand on Zoom. Seeing none, and I know we already did our voicemail comments as well, we'll close public comment and we will adjourn tonight's meeting. So thank you everyone for participating, and we will see you next Tuesday.